Hello, everybody, and welcome to an episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? I'm Karen Osborne, author of Getting It Right, Karen E. Osborne, author of Getting It Right, and my new book, Tangled Lies, comes out on July 22nd of this year. Very excited. And I am here with a wonderful guest, someone I've known for a long time, and somebody who loves reading and writing and is in a point in her writing journey that I think you will find interesting and helpful. So we're just going to dive right in. And I want to introduce you to Theresa Davis. Welcome, Theresa.
Hi, Karen. It's so good to be here with you today.
Yes, I'm excited. And with all of our listeners and viewers, I think some people just listen and some people watch.
Yep.
But I wanted to start out because I've never met a writer who wasn't a prolific reader.
Mm.
In fact, you and I talked about, you were telling me and sharing with me your library experience as a little kid. And I can remember going to the library and carrying 7 books. We were only allowed 7 books at a time. And so I would get my 7 books and I'd read them all in like a day and a half. And then I'd have to wait. It was so hard to get back to the library. And I raised my kids in the library. So libraries are very close to me, and books have always been a part of my life. So tell me about what was a book that you read recently or two that just really stayed with you, that you loved?
Oh my gosh, Karen, before I share that with you, you're absolutely right about the library. As I was telling you, my mom was just an avid reader. And there are a lot of these kids, of us kids. I come from a family of 9 kids.
Ooh.
And mom would cart us off to the library with her. And you're right, you can only get like 7 books or so, and we'd get them. And some of the memories that I have, some of the fondest memories I have were being a kid and reading. And there's one Thanksgiving in particular, I remember sitting under the dining room table. I think I must have been 8 years old or so. And while mom was busy cooking dinner, I'm sitting under the table reading horror novels, if you can imagine that. At 8 years old, yeah, I loved Edgar Allan Poe even at that age, and so it was just so much fun. So you're right. Once you get the reading bug, it's just kind of with you for life. So speaking of which, what am I reading now? This is the odd situation where I'm actually reading 2 books at once. I usually like to only focus on one, but I'm ending up reading 2. One is a book, Lovecraft Country, which was recommended to me probably now about 7 months or so ago, excuse me, by a colleague, a team member. And I picked up the book and started to reading it, and then got sidetracked. And so I'm not quite through it yet. And in the meantime, HBO has made a series out of it, right? Which I refuse to watch until I'm through the book because I don't want one to influence the other. And that's by a wonderful author named Matt Ruff. And I'm really just loving that book right now. And the second is a werewolf book by Anne Rice called The Werewolf Gift. And so I'm kind of working on both of them at the same time. It's great fun.
Yeah, so you're man forever.
It's true.
Yeah, that is very, very cool. I did watch the HBO series.
Oh, don't tell me anything about it
except tell you anything.
Oh, it must be so much fun.
But we binged, my husband Bob and I, we binged right through it to the very end. So we'll have to talk after you finish the book and seen the series, and then we'll have to compare notes.
Yeah, because I always wonder whether or not the story is going to stick closely to what's written in the book, right?
They never do.
The Stand. They rarely do. They rarely do. The Stand is on CBS All Access right now, and of course, I read The Stand by Stephen King years and years ago when it first came out, and I'm enjoying the series. I am. It's a little different.
Yes, they don't for whatever reason, except for The Godfather. I felt like The Godfather 1 and 2. It was one of the books I loved, and I love the movies even more. Usually I say, oh, I love the book, and the movie was okay. But So it's rare. So I can't wait to have that conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Have you read, I just finished reading The Vanishing Half.
Oh, I haven't read that.
Oh my goodness. This is an amazing book written by a Black woman, and it is about twins, a set of twins, and this is, like in the 50s in the South. And they were very, very fair skinned. And one of them decided to pass, and the other one, took a different road and married, as she said, the blackest man she could find. And but what's so great about the book is that the vanishing half, the theme of the vanishing half, plays out in all different ways. It's not just the twins that have vanished, but there's all kinds of relationships that vanish, and she really weaves it in. It's been on the New York Times bestseller list for, I don't know, 30 weeks or something. It's a really, really good book.
Well, I have to read it. That sounds great.
Yeah, but it's not horror.
That's okay. Hey, horror isn't my only genre. I love, legal thrillers. John Grisham is a favorite as well. And so number of different kinds of genres. I think I was sharing with you Philippa Gregory. If you love historical novels, she's amazing. Yeah, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, we got to keep ourselves broad, don't we?
All right.
But sticking with the horror theme.
Okay. Which I'm always happy to do.
I was just so interested, and you were talking about your writing. And well, first, before we talk about the book you've written, I know you've written short stories as well, but maybe you could tell me a little bit about your writing journey. Like, where are you in that writing journey right now, and why?
Yeah, I love that, Karen. First of all, I just love you that you would say, the novel that you've written. Okay, so it's more like the novel that I'm sort of mulling over because it speaks a lot to my writing journey, right? And so I've always been writing something, one thing or the other, for years and years, as you might imagine, right? I think a lot of writers are that way. I probably started writing and entering one contest or another, when I was in high school, or maybe 8th or 9th grade. And so when you love writing, you kind of love it. But this whole novel thing, it's the idea that kind of just, it's in my head. And so the journey has been this, that I've loved reading and am a sometimes writer, and was really encouraged to write more when I was taking a writing class in college, working on my bachelor's degree there at Arizona State. And the graduate student who was teaching that class in part, she said to me one day, you have a really good ear. If you wanted to, I'd be happy to kind of coach you. And now that, now that the work that I do, I work with graduate students a lot. I didn't realize at the time what a compliment that was, that a graduate student would take time away from their work to be willing to help you on anything is just an amazing thing. So I wish I'd taken her up on it. But always really kind of enjoyed it, but never put the time into it, right? There's always some reason or another why I just can't do it. And so such with the novel that I'm working on now, mostly mulling over, right? I'm working on it in my head, right? And I've written down a few things, but I haven't really dove into it. And for the longest time, I wanted to say that was really about me just being so busy. The job is just so busy. And sometimes it's difficult when you're working a job, when you're sometimes working till 8 or 9 o'clock at night, to then find the energy to write. But when I'm just truthful with myself, it's really about fear, right? It's a fear thing. It's like, what if I've got to get the point of view just right, because wow, who wants to rewrite something that you're halfway through and now you've figured out that you really should have taken a different point of view, or gee, what if this opening isn't exciting enough? And of course, you and I know that if either of those cases were the situation, you just go back and rewrite it, right? Just go back and who wants that? So it's really the fear that keeps me from actually sitting down and writing the novel. Lots of character sketches. Oh, I know my characters inside out. Oh yeah.
That's a big part of the job, though.
Yeah.
I'm always so surprised by the number of people who don't take the time to really think through their characters. They don't know what the character would do in any given situation because they haven't created the whole backstory. They don't know everything that happened to this character. Not that it's going to all be in the book, but you can't react to something if I don't know who you are. I can't. So I think you're halfway, even more than halfway, halfway
Thank you,
there.
Karen. That makes me feel better. Hearing that from somebody who's actually written and published novels. That's encouraging.
And I think the fear thing is very common. I bet so many of the people who are watching who have all wanted to be a writer or is a writer and need to work on that next book, that fear of rejection, that fear of it not, turning out. I have a dear friend who has written 2 very successful books. And then the third one, nobody was interested and she was devastated. It was a very devastating moment for her because, hey, I'm a published author. I've got 2 great books out there. And well, this one, no one was interested. And she loved it. She loved do you love your stories and your characters?
Oh, I do. I do, right? Because and you and I talked about this before. The characters, to some degree, they come from us. But the truth of it is, they start to write themselves. They have their own personalities. And if you, as the writer, are just listening to them, at least this person's experience, right?
Mhm.
Is that after I actually get them down on paper and start to write a few words, and sometimes when I look back at it the next day, I'm amazed at what I wrote. I'm like, wow, where'd that story come from? Or where'd that character come from? Or wow, so yeah, of course you love them. And there are bits and pieces of ourselves or people that we know and love in all of them, right? Even the ones that we think are even a little diabolical.
Yes.
We
So
love them.
I can't wait to read something you read and see which of your horror characters, which of the, is it a mutant? Is it a werewolf? That's a little bit like you.
But it's really true. Like I'm thinking, it's interesting you say that. The story that I'm working on now, one of the characters, though well intended, is a little bit jaded. Person's a little bit jaded, and yeah, I can be a little bit jaded sometimes. And in fact, I'd say, yeah, of all the characters, in some ways, that person feels most like me of all of those.
Oh, that's
Characters.
interesting.
Yeah, so I always think that I'm exploring that side of myself whenever I think through that character a bit.
Yeah. Someone told me that one's first book tends to be the most autobiographical. And then as one writes more and more, you kind of run out of life stories.
Right, it's true.
And you start. So I think that's kind of interesting too. As I look at my novels and how I evolve, it's going to be interesting to see how much of me I leave out. But my husband said, he had a very funny comment. He would say to friends, be careful what you say to her. You're going to end up in her novel.
See, that would be awesome. Karen, you should feel free to take anything that I say and just put it right in your novel. I would love to be reading and go, oh my gosh, I said that to her.
Very cool. Very cool.
It was great. I kept looking for my mother's name in a Dean Koontz novel because I went to a book signing of his once, and my mom at the time was a real fan of his. And so when he signed my book, I told him it was for my mom. And he said, "What's her name?" And I said, "Her name is Mozella." He said, "Oh, that's an interesting name." He said, "Let me put that in a book one day." And of course, I never saw one in there, but I haven't read everything of his. A lot of his, but I haven't read everything.
And he filed that away.
He did. Yeah, he's probably waiting for the perfect person. That's the name, Mozella.
He has to meet her. He hasn't met her yet, the character yet.
That's right. That's right.
But he will. Well, I look forward. Oh, I did want to ask you one other thing before we wrap up. So you said to me that you write short stories. Are they in the same genre? Are they in a different genre? And how do you feel about the novel versus short stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. They're in the same genre now, and sadly, I can say, probably most of the short stories that I wrote early on. I don't even have them. I don't even know where they are anymore. I think sometimes, and now I regret that I've gotten rid of them. Sometimes we are our own worst critic.
Yes.
But the ones that I have now are in the same genre. You know, in some ways, the short story is easier and harder than the novel for me. Because with the short story, it's pretty contained. It's short. You can tell a story, whether it's a day or a lifetime. You can tell it and should tell it pretty quickly for it to be that novella or even. But it's more difficult at the same time because you simply cannot miss a step, right? You know, there's no room for error, really, right? And so you have to kind of edit it pretty well. The novel, and maybe this is what I'm struggling with a little bit, as the novel, you got to take that story and really make it interesting over what, the course of 300
400.
Yeah, you've got to make it interesting, keep it interesting, highs, lows throughout. And so you can get your short story told pretty interestingly, pretty quickly. The novel, it's all a craft. It all takes craft. Well, craft, but they have their different challenges.
Yeah, I remember 30,000. Are you hearing an echo?
I don't.
Oh, good. That means you guys.
Oh, I hope it's not me. And I don't hear an echo from you. I hope it's not my microphone.
I remember hitting the 30,000 word mark, and I had read that you have to get to at least 70,000 words. And I remember just thinking, I don't have another 30, 40,000 words to say, you know. I don't know what but sure enough, characters, you know, their backstories and their energy, you know, moves you forward. And then with a short story, I find, because I've written many, many short stories, and I find that the short stories, I have to remember that I don't have time. I've got to make things happen. You know, it can't slowly evolve. It has to, as you say, it has to be on point. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm going to need that knife in the short story, I'm going to need to plant it probably within the first, surely in the first chapter. The novel, I've got 5 chapters before I go ahead and plant that weapon that I'm going to need, right? You've got time, but you got to kind of get to it in the short stories. I think it's one of the things I loved about Edgar Allan Poe, and still do, even though I haven't read him in some time now, is that, well, you were talking about a master storyteller, right? Who could really spin a very complicated yarn and do it with very few words.
Yeah, he really is a master. Absolutely. I love a good short story.
Yeah.
You just, when you read it and you just know that this is somebody who is in charge of their craft, you know,
Right.
that they really get it. Well, we want to thank all of you. I want to thank my guest, Theresa Davis, and I want to thank all of you for listening to us and watching us. We are both available to answer any questions that you might have. And if you go to my website, www.kareneosborne.com, there is a contact, place to write, and you could just write a question to say, this is for Theresa, and I will be in touch with her, or this is for Karen, or for both of you, and we will respond. I hope you will come back to YouTube and see the next episode of What Are You Reading? What are you writing? And I hope you'll let us know. Tell us what you're reading and what you're working on. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Karen. It's been fun.